I stood outside my apartment door at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, my work boots heavy with sawdust and my shoulders aching from 12 straight hours of installing kitchen cabinets for wealthy clients who never said thank you. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and cleaning supplies, just like it had for the past month since I finished transforming my rundown studio into something beautiful. Every weekend for 8 months, every spare dollar from my construction paycheck, every blister and cut on my hands had gone into making this place mine. But now my key wouldn't turn in the lock. I jiggled it, thinking the mechanism was just sticky from the humidity. Mrs. Patterson shuffled out of the apartment next door, her curlers wrapped in a pink scarf, and said she'd seen moving trucks earlier. My stomach dropped. Someone had changed my locks. My hands shook as I dialed my mother's number, expecting her to gasp in horror when I explained that someone had broken into my apartment and changed the locks. Instead, Carol Jenkins, my 53-year-old mother, who had raised Anna and me alone after Dad died, spoke in the same tone she used to discuss grocery shopping. "Oh, that's right, honey. We let Anna move in yesterday. She showed up Sunday night with bruises on her arms, crying about Jake getting violent again. You know how these things go with marriages. She needed somewhere safe and you're young. You can figure something out." The phone nearly slipped from my grip. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "This is my apartment. I have a lease." Anna has been through so much trauma, Ron. She has real responsibilities and needs stability right now. You're 28 and single. You can sleep anywhere. I drove the 15 minutes from downtown Springfield to Maple Street in a daze, my mind racing through the impossibility of what my mother had just told me. Anna had always been the golden child, the one who went to college while I learned construction, the one who married Jake Peterson from a good family while I stayed single and focused on building my career. She was also the one who laughed when I told the family I was saving up for my own place. "Ron thinks he can afford an apartment," she had said at Christmas dinner 2 years ago, cutting her prime rib with delicate precision. That's adorable. Construction workers don't become property owners' little brother. They fix things for people who actually matter. Now I stood in the hallway outside apartment 214, staring at my own door. I could hear music inside, something classical and pretentious that Anna always preferred. I knocked, and after a long pause, the deadbolt turned. Anna opened the door wearing a silk robe I'd never seen before, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite her supposed crisis. She looked me up and down with the same expression she'd worn when I tracked mud through Mom's house as a kid. "You look terrible, Ron. Have you been sleeping in that truck again?" I looked past her into my apartment, and my heart sank. Everything had changed. My brown leather couch, the one I'd saved for 6 months to buy, was gone. In its place sat a white sectional that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. My coffee table, built from reclaimed barn wood I'd found in Kentucky, had been replaced with some glass monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a museum. The walls I'd painted sage green, spending 3 weekends getting the color exactly right, were now covered with Anna's abstract art pieces that looked like angry paint splatters. "Where are my things?" I asked, stepping inside without permission. "I donated most of that bachelor trash to Goodwill. You should be thanking me. This place looks like adults live here now, instead of a college dormitory." Anna walked to the kitchen, where my custom-built breakfast bar had been covered with her collection of crystal wine glasses. "I kept a few items in storage boxes. They're in the bedroom closet, though I can't imagine why you'd want any of it back." The bedroom. I walked through the doorway and stopped breathing. This had been my sanctuary, the place where I'd installed floating shelves for my father's woodworking tools, and painted the walls deep blue to match the navy bedding I'd bought with my first construction bonus. Now the walls were beige, and a king-sized bed with pink, flowery sheets dominated the space. My father's tools were gone. "Where are Dad's chisels? His hand plane collection?" Anna shrugged, not looking up from the magazine she was flipping through. "That old junk was taking up space. I needed room for my meditation cushions and yoga equipment. This is my healing sanctuary now. Those tools belong to our father. He made furniture with those tools before he died." "Ron, you're being dramatic." Dad's been gone for 12 years. It's time to let go of the past and move forward. I'm going through a real crisis here, and you're worried about some rusty old metal. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. This is my apartment, Anna. I have a lease with my name on it. She finally looked at me directly, and I saw something I'd never noticed before. Her blue eyes, so much like our mother's, held no warmth at all. They were calculating like a chess player studying the board. You have a lease, yes. But I have needs, and I have family support. Mom agrees that I should be here, and honestly, Ron, what are you going to do about it? Call the police on your own sister, the one who's fleeing domestic violence? How do you think that will look? She was right, and she knew it. Anna had always been smarter than me in ways that mattered to other people. She'd learned how to manipulate situations while I'd learned how to fix broken pipes. You said I'd never afford this place. You said construction workers don't become property owners. Anna smiled the same smile she'd given me when she broke my G.I. Joe figures when I was 7 and convinced Mom I'd done it myself. And look how right I was. Here you are, still a construction worker, and I'm the one living in your apartment. Some things never change, little brother. The Springfield Police Department on Main Street looked like every small-town police station in America, with its brick facade and flag hanging limply in the humid evening air. I pushed through the glass doors carrying my lease agreement, my bank statements, and every receipt I could find proving this apartment belonged to me. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I approached the front desk, where Officer Martinez, a stocky man with graying temples, looked up from his paperwork. I need to report a break-in and theft, I said, sliding my documents across the counter. Someone changed the locks on my apartment and moved in without permission. Officer Martinez examined my lease with the tired expression of someone who'd seen too many family disputes. Says here the apartment is leased to Ron Jenkins. That's you. Yes, sir. I've been living there for 8 months. I just finished renovating the whole place. And who's in the apartment now? My sister, Anna Peterson. She changed the locks while I was at work and claims she's staying there because she's going through a divorce. Officer Martinez set down my lease and leaned back in his chair. Mr. Jenkins, does your sister have a key to the apartment? She had a spare key, yes, but only for emergencies. And is she family? I could see where this was heading. Yes, but that doesn't give her the right to take over my apartment. Actually, sir, it does complicate things. Since your sister had lawful access to the property and she's family, this becomes a civil matter rather than criminal breaking and entering. You'll need to resolve this through the courts or work it out with your landlord. My hands clenched into fists. So anyone can just move into someone else's apartment as long as they're related? Mr. Jenkins, I understand your frustration, but our hands are tied. Now, if she had broken down the door or if there was evidence of forced entry, that would be different. But she used a key you gave her. I left the police station feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The summer air felt thick and oppressive as I sat in my pickup truck, staring at the lease that apparently meant nothing. My phone buzzed with a text message. Ron, this is Patricia Wells, Anna's attorney. Please cease all harassment of my client immediately. Any further attempts to contact Mrs. Peterson or gain entry to her residence will result in legal action. Mrs. Peterson is a domestic violence victim seeking safe shelter, and your behavior is both inappropriate and potentially criminal. I read the message 3 times. Anna's attorney. She'd already hired a lawyer. My next stop was the apartment complex office, but the building was dark. A handwritten sign on the door read, Manager on vacation until July 23rd. For emergencies, call the answering service. Mr. Thompson, the property manager who'd been so helpful when I signed my lease, was somewhere in Florida for 2 weeks. I called the answering service and spent 20 minutes explaining my situation to a bored operator who took my information and promised someone would call me back within 48 hours. No one called. That night, I slept in my truck in the parking lot of the construction site, where I was installing cabinets for a medical office. I used baby wipes from a gas station to clean myself and bought a cup of coffee and a stale donut for breakfast. By the time I got to work, I looked like exactly what I was, a homeless person. Tony Ricci, my boss and the owner of Ricci Construction, took one look at me and frowned. Ron, you look like hell. What's going on? I explained the situation while we unloaded cabinet boxes from the truck. Tony listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing more concerned as I talked. Jesus, kid, your own sister. That's cold even for family drama. I don't know what to do, Tony. The cops say it's civil. The lawyer says I'm harassing a domestic violence victim and the landlord is on vacation. Tony handed me a drill and a box of screws. You know what your problem is? You're too nice. You gave her a key you trusted family, and now she's using that against you. Some people, even family, they're just users. They'll take everything you've got and make you feel guilty for wanting it back. So what do? Fight back. But not the way she expects. She's playing games, so you need to get better at the game than she is. The morning passed in a blur of measurements and drilling, but I couldn't focus. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was Mr. Thompson calling me back. Instead, it was my Uncle Brian. Ron, what the hell is wrong with you? Anna called me crying, saying you're trying to kick her out while she's running from an abusive husband. I'm the one who got you this job, boy. Don't make me regret that recommendation. Uncle Brian, that's not what happened. She stole my apartment. She's family, Ron. Family helps family. If you can't understand that, maybe you're not the man I thought you were. The call ended before I could respond. I realized Anna wasn't just taking my apartment. She was taking my reputation, my family relationships, and my job security. She'd turned my own support system against me with a few carefully placed phone calls. That afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Jenkins. This is Patricia Wells, attorney for Mrs. Peterson. I understand you've been harassing my client and attempting to interfere with her housing situation. I haven't been harassing anyone. It's my apartment. Mr. Jenkins, Mrs. Peterson, is a domestic violence survivor who has established residency in that apartment with the support of her family. Any attempt to remove her could be considered criminal harassment of a protected person. I'm advising you to cease all contact with Mrs. Peterson and find alternative housing immediately. She changed my locks. She threw away my belongings. Mrs. Peterson has informed me that she improved the living conditions of the apartment and donated some unwanted items to charity. She's been paying rent and has every right to make the space habitable for someone escaping an abusive situation. Paying rent, that was impossible. Anna had never paid for anything in her life. I'd like to see proof that she's been paying rent. Mr. Jenkins, Mrs. Peterson's financial arrangements are not your concern. I'm sending a cease and desist letter to your last known address. Any violation of this order will result in a restraining order and possible criminal charges. The lawyer hung up and I sat in my truck staring at my phone. In less than 24 hours, Anna had convinced the police I was a harasser, hired a lawyer to threaten me, turned my family against me, and apparently created some kind of paper trail showing she'd been paying rent on my apartment. I'd spent 8 months renovating that place, 8 months turning a shabby studio into something beautiful. I'd installed new flooring, painted every wall, fixed the plumbing, and upgraded the electrical outlets. I'd put in a custom breakfast bar and built shelves that fit the space perfectly. Every detail had been planned and executed with my own hands, and Anna had destroyed it all in a single day. 3 days later, I was eating lunch alone at Murphy's Diner when Dave Kowalski slid into the booth across from me. Dave and I had known each other since high school, and he worked nights as a bartender at Flanagan's Pub downtown. His expression was troubled as he ordered coffee from the waitress. Ron, I heard about your situation with Anna. That's messed up, man. Yeah, well, family is family, right? I stabbed at my meatloaf, having lost most of my appetite since this whole nightmare began. Actually, that's why I wanted to talk to you. I overheard something last Friday night that you need to know about. I looked up from my plate. Dave had that expression he got when he was about to deliver bad news, the same look he'd worn when he told me my high school girlfriend was cheating on me. Jake Peterson was at the bar with his buddy Trevor, and they'd been drinking for a while. You know how guys get when they've had too much whiskey and start running their mouths? What did Jake say? He was bragging about some kind of real estate deal. Said he and Anna had been planning something for months, researching property values in your neighborhood. Apparently, all that renovation work you did increased the apartment's value by about $40,000. The meatloaf turned to sawdust in my mouth. What do you mean planning? Jake said Anna's been watching your renovation progress, taking pictures, getting estimates on what improvements like yours cost. They figured out that your apartment is now worth way more than what you're paying in rent, and they want a piece of it. Dave leaned forward, lowering his voice, even though the diner was nearly empty. Here's the really sick part, Ron. The whole domestic violence thing is fake. Anna and Jake aren't getting divorced. They're pretending to separate so Anna can establish residency in your apartment, claim tenant rights, and then force you to sell the lease or something. Jake was laughing about how they researched tenant law and found some loophole. My coffee cup slipped from my hands and shattered against the floor, sending brown liquids splashing across the linoleum. The waitress hurried over with a mop, but I barely noticed. They're still together, very much together. Jake said the plan is for Anna to stay in the apartment for 6 months, establish legal residency, then claim common law tenant rights or some legal thing their lawyer explained. Once she's got legal standing, they'll force some kind of buyout situation where you have to sell and they get a cut of the profits. I thought about all the improvements I'd made, all the money I'd invested, all the sweat equity I'd put into that place. $40,000 in added value. Anna and Jake wanted to steal half of that through some legal scam. There's more, Dave continued. Jake said Anna's been documenting everything, taking pictures of the apartment's condition, keeping records of her supposed rent payments. She's building some kind of case to prove she's a legitimate tenant. She told her lawyer she's been paying rent, but I never received any money from her. Right, but Jake was laughing about money orders, said Anna's been buying money orders and keeping copies to show she's been sending rent payments somewhere. Doesn't matter if you actually received them, just that she can prove she tried to pay. The pieces started falling into place. Anna had been planning this for months, watching my renovation progress, researching the legal angles, setting up her fake domestic violence story. She'd probably copied my keys during one of her visits, maybe when she helped me move my tool collection to the apartment back in February. Dave, did Jake say anything else? Yeah, he mentioned some paralegal guy Anna's been dating, someone who's been giving her legal advice about tenant rights and property law. Jake thought it was hilarious that Anna's been playing you and this other guy at the same time, a paralegal boyfriend. That explained how Anna had gotten a lawyer so quickly, how she'd known exactly what to say to the police, how she'd crafted her story to make me look like the aggressor. I paid for my lunch and drove straight to my apartment complex. I needed to see what Anna had been doing, needed to understand how extensive this scheme really was. I parked across the street and watched the building for an hour. At 2:30, Anna emerged wearing a sundress and carrying a briefcase, looking nothing like a traumatized domestic violence victim. She got into her red Camaro, the same car Jake had bought her for their anniversary 6 months ago, and drove away. I waited another 30 minutes, then approached Mrs. Patterson, who was watering plants on her balcony. "Excuse me, Mrs. Patterson. I'm Ron Jenkins from apartment 214. I was wondering if you'd noticed anything unusual lately." "Oh, Ron, dear. I'm so sorry about your sister's situation. She seems like such a sweet girl going through such a difficult time. What has she told you about her situation?" "Well, she explained that her husband had been hitting her, and she needed somewhere safe to stay. She said you generously offered your apartment while you stayed with friends. Such a kind brother you are." Generously offered. Anna had been spreading lies to everyone in the building, making herself look like a victim, and me look like a willing accomplice. "Mrs. Patterson, has my sister had any visitors?" "Oh yes, several people have been coming by to support her. There was a young man yesterday, very professional looking. They were looking at papers together and she seemed quite relieved after he left. And of course her support group meets there twice a week." Support group. Anna was holding meetings in my apartment, establishing herself as a permanent resident while building a network of witnesses who could testify that she lived there. I drove to Jake's workplace, Peterson Automotive, a garage on the south side of town, where Jake worked as a mechanic. I found him in Bay 3, changing the oil on a pickup truck. He looked up when my shadow fell across the garage floor, and I saw something flicker across his face before he smiled. "Ron, hey buddy, how are you holding up?" Anna told me you've been going through a rough patch. Is that what she told you? Jake straightened up, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. Yeah, man. Tough break about the apartment situation. But you know how it is with family. Sometimes you've got to make sacrifices. Jake, let me ask you something. Are you and Anna actually getting divorced? His smile faltered for just a moment, but he recovered quickly. That's between Anna and me, Ron. Marriage is complicated. Sometimes people need space to figure things out. So you're not living together anymore. Like I said, it's complicated. Jake turned back to the truck, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. I decided to take a gamble. Dave Kowalski told me he overheard you at Flanagan's last Friday. Something about a real estate deal. Jake froze his hand still on the oil drain plug. When he turned around, the friendly mask was completely gone. You know what, Ron? Yeah, we've got a real estate deal going. You want to know what it is? You're too stupid to protect what's yours, so smarter people are taking it from you. Anna said you'd never figure it out, and look how right she was. You're standing here asking me questions instead of doing anything useful about it. You're admitting you're scamming me. I'm admitting that you're a sucker who spent months making that apartment valuable, and now people who actually know how the world works are going to profit from your hard work. That's not a scam, Ron. That's just life. Jake stepped closer and I could smell motor oil and cigarettes on his breath. Anna was right about you from the beginning. You're a simple guy who's good with his hands but can't think 3 moves ahead. You renovated that apartment like a trained monkey, never thinking about what would happen when it became valuable. Now Anna's sitting pretty in a $40,000 upgrade, and you're sleeping in your truck. She's my sister, and I'm her husband. Family doesn't mean what you think it means, buddy. Family is about loyalty, and Anna's loyal to the person who can give her the best life. That's me, not you. Jake turned back to his work, dismissing me completely. Here's some free advice, little brother. Find yourself a new apartment and forget about this one. Anna's not going anywhere, and neither am I. We've got lawyers, we've got documentation, and we've got a plan. What do you have? I walked back to my truck feeling like I'd been hit by a sledgehammer. Everything I'd suspected was true. Anna and Jake were running a sophisticated scam using fake domestic violence claims, fraudulent rent receipts, and legal technicalities to steal the value I'd added to my apartment through months of hard work. But Jake was wrong about one thing. I wasn't just a simple guy who was good with his hands. I was a construction worker, which meant I knew how to solve problems, how to fix things that were broken, and how to build something strong from the ground up. Anna and Jake thought they were smarter than me. They were about to learn that smart and clever aren't the same thing, and that sometimes the guy who builds things for a living knows exactly how to tear them down. Sunday morning arrived gray and humid, with the kind of oppressive heat that made everything stick to your skin. I'd been sleeping in my truck for a week, showering at the gym and buying coffee from gas stations. My back ached from the cramped sleeping position, and my work clothes carried the stale smell of someone without a proper home. I was sitting in the parking lot of St. Mary's Catholic Church, watching families walk into morning service, when I saw Anna's red Camaro pull up. She stepped out wearing a navy blue dress and pearl earrings, looking every inch the respectable young woman seeking comfort in her faith. What I wasn't prepared for was seeing her walk arm in arm with our mother Carol, who'd driven down from Millfield specifically to attend church with her troubled daughter. My phone buzzed with a call from Pastor Williams. Ron, this is Father Williams. Could you come by the church office this afternoon? I'd like to speak with you about a sensitive family matter. What kind of family matter, Father? I think it would be better if we discussed this in person. Would 2 o'clock work for you? I spent the morning at a laundromat, washing my work clothes and trying to make myself presentable. At exactly 2 o'clock, I knocked on the door of the church office, a small room behind the sanctuary that smelled like old books and furniture polish. Pastor Williams was a kind man in his 60s who'd married half the couples in Springfield and buried the other half. He gestured for me to sit in the wooden chair across from his desk, his expression gentle but concerned. Ron, your sister came to see me yesterday. She's been attending services here for the past few weeks, and she's shared with me some of the difficulties she's been experiencing. I already knew where this was heading. Father, I think there might be some misunderstanding about my sister's situation. She's told me about the domestic violence she's suffered and how you've generously allowed her to stay in your apartment while she recovers from this trauma. I wanted to commend you for showing such Christian charity during her time of need. Generously allowed. The same lie she'd told Mrs. Patterson, now spreading through my church community. Father Williams, I need to tell you the truth about what's really happening. I explained everything Anna's fake domestic violence claims, the real estate scam, how she'd stolen my apartment, and turned my family against me. Pastor Williams listened with the patient expression of someone accustomed to hearing confessions, but I could see skepticism growing in his eyes. Ron, these are very serious accusations. Are you certain you're not letting anger cloud your judgment? Sometimes when we're hurt by family members, we can imagine conspiracies where there might simply be misunderstandings. Father, she admitted to me that she planned this. Her husband admitted they're scamming me. Your sister has shown me photographs of her injuries, Ron. She's also brought documentation showing that she's been contributing to the household expenses. This doesn't sound like someone who's trying to take advantage of family generosity. Documentation. Anna had shown fake evidence to my pastor, the man who'd known me since I was 12 years old and served as an altar boy. Could I see this documentation? Ron. I think what's important here is that we focus on healing this family division. Your sister needs support right now, not suspicion and accusations. Perhaps we could arrange a family counseling session where you both could express your concerns in a safe environment. I left the church office feeling like I'd been branded a liar by my own pastor. The afternoon sun blazed down as I walked to my truck, and I noticed Mrs. Franklin from the apartment complex standing near the church entrance. She was 82 years old, lived alone with 3 cats, and had always been friendly when I carried her groceries upstairs. Ron, dear, I'm so glad I ran into you. Hello, Mrs. Franklin, how are you? Her expression shifted from warm to wary. Well, I'm concerned, actually. Your sister has told me some troubling things about your behavior lately. My heart sank. What has she told you? She said you've been trying to force her out of the apartment even though she's going through such a difficult divorce. She showed me the bruises her husband gave her. That poor girl is just trying to heal, and here you are making her feel unwelcome in the only safe place she has. Anna had gotten to Mrs. Franklin too, turning my elderly neighbor into another witness for her fake victim story. Mrs. Franklin, I think there's been a misunderstanding. That apartment is legally mine. I have a lease. Oh, honey, I know it's your apartment. But family takes care of family, doesn't it? When I was young, we always made room for relatives in crisis. Your sister isn't asking for much, just a safe place to stay while she gets back on her feet. How long has she told you she plans to stay? Well, these things take time, dear. Divorce proceedings can go on for months, sometimes longer. But she's such a sweet girl, keeping the place so tidy and quiet. She even started a support group for other women going through similar situations. They meet twice a week in the evening. It's wonderful to see women helping each other. A support group. Anna was now hosting regular meetings in my apartment, establishing herself as a permanent resident while building a network of sympathetic witnesses. Mrs. Franklin, has my sister mentioned anything about paying rent? Oh yes, she's very responsible about that. She showed me her money order receipts just yesterday, proving that she's been contributing her fair share. She said you were being unreasonable about the financial arrangements, but she wanted to do the right thing anyway. Money order receipts. Anna was showing fake evidence to everyone in the building, creating the impression that she was a legitimate paying tenant who was being harassed by an unreasonable landlord. That evening, I parked across the street from the apartment complex and watched women arriving for Anna's support group meeting. I counted 8 cars, including 2 minivans and a pickup truck. These women were walking into my apartment, using my renovated space and probably hearing Anna's fabricated story about what a terrible brother I was. At 8:30, the women began leaving. I approached one of them, a middle-aged blonde woman who was walking to a blue Honda. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm Ron Jenkins. That's actually my apartment where you just had your meeting. The woman stopped and looked at me with immediate suspicion. You're Anna's brother, the one who's been harassing her. I haven't been harassing anyone. It's my apartment. I have a lease. Anna told us about you. She said you've been trying to kick her out even though she's fleeing domestic violence. That's despicable behavior for a brother. Ma'am, I think Anna hasn't been entirely truthful about her situation. The woman's expression hardened. I've seen her bruises. I've heard her story. And I've seen how terrified she is that you're going to make her homeless. What kind of man threatens a woman who's already been abused? She got in her car and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot like a pariah. Anna had successfully convinced 8 women that I was the villain in this story, 8 potential witnesses who could testify to her residency and my supposed harassment. My phone rang. It was my cousin Jennifer calling from Ohio. Ron, Mom just called me about your situation with Anna. What's wrong with you? How can you even think about making her homeless when she's running from an abusive husband? Jennifer, that's not what's happening. Anna is lying about the domestic violence. She has bruises, Ron. Mom saw them. Pastor Williams saw them. Are you calling all these people liars? I'm saying Anna made those bruises herself or got them somewhere else. She and Jake are still together. This is all a scam to steal my apartment. Ron, you sound paranoid. Maybe you need to talk to someone professional about these conspiracy theories you're developing. Jennifer hung up, and I realized Anna's poison had spread all the way to Ohio. My extended family now thought I was either cruel or mentally unstable. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Tony waiting for me with a grim expression. Ron, we need to talk. He led me away from the other workers to his truck parked behind the building. I got a call yesterday from your Uncle Brian. He says you're having some kind of breakdown harassing your sister who's trying to escape domestic violence. Tony, you know me. Do I seem like someone who would harass a domestic violence victim? No, you don't. But Brian says the whole family is concerned about your behavior. He's worried that the stress of this situation is affecting your work performance. I looked at Tony's weathered face, seeing both sympathy and concern. He'd been like a father to me for the past 5 years, teaching me everything I knew about construction and renovation work. Tony, if I tell you the real story, will you listen? I'm listening. I explained everything again, watching Tony's expression change from concern to anger as he understood the scope of Anna's scheme. Jesus Christ, Ron. Your own sister is trying to steal everything you've worked for. That's exactly what she's doing, and she's convinced everyone that I'm the problem. Tony was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the construction site where we were building a medical office from the ground up. You know what this reminds me of? When I was your age, I had a business partner who embezzled $50,000 from our company. He made it look like I was the one stealing, turned all our clients against me, nearly destroyed my reputation. What did you do? I fought back, but not the way he expected. See, guys like that, they're good at manipulation and lies. But they're not good at actual work. They make mistakes because they're lazy, and lazy people always leave evidence. Tony put his hand on my shoulder. Your sister thinks she's smarter than you, but she's not. She's just more willing to lie and cheat. The difference is liars eventually contradict themselves and cheaters eventually get greedy. You just have to be patient and pay attention. What if I can't find any evidence? What if she's covered all her tracks? Ron, in 30 years of construction, I've learned one thing for certain. There's no such thing as a perfect job. Everyone makes mistakes, even criminals. Your sister will screw up eventually. When she does, you need to be ready. As we walked back toward the work site, Tony stopped and looked at me seriously. But Ron, you need to understand something. This fight is going to cost you. It's going to cost you sleep money, relationships, and probably some of your faith in family. You sure you're ready for that? I thought about my apartment, about the 8 months of weekends I'd spent making it beautiful, about my father's woodworking tools that Anna had thrown away like garbage. I thought about sleeping in my truck while she hosted support group meetings in the space I'd built with my own hands. I'm ready. 2 weeks later, I was a ghost of myself. The summer heat had turned brutal, with temperatures reaching 98 degrees during the day and barely cooling at night. Sleeping in my pickup truck had become torture, even with the windows down and a battery-powered fan I'd bought from Walmart. I'd lost 17 pounds. My work clothes hung loose on my frame, and dark circles shadowed my eyes. Tony had started giving me easier assignments, the kind of detail work that didn't require heavy lifting or complex problem solving. I could see the concern in his eyes when he looked at me, and I knew my job was hanging by a thread. "Ron, you can't keep going like this," he said as we finished installing baseboards in an office suite. "You look like a skeleton. When's the last time you had a real meal?" "I eat. Gas station hot dogs and convenience store sandwiches don't count as real meals. You need to figure this situation out before it kills you." That afternoon, I drove to the apartment complex office, hoping Mr. Thompson had returned from his vacation. The building was still dark, but there was a new sign on the door. "Property Management Services now provided by Springfield Associates. For all tenant concerns, contact Maria Santos." I called the number and reached a crisp, professional woman who listened to my story with the detached efficiency of someone who dealt with tenant disputes all day. "Mr. Jenkins, I'll need to review the property file and speak with all parties involved before I can make any determination about this situation. Could you come in tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Please bring all relevant documentation." The next morning, I showered at the gym, put on my cleanest work shirt, and drove to Springfield Associates. The office was modern and sterile, nothing like Mr. Thompson's cluttered space above the apartment complex. Maria Santos was a woman in her 40s, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Jenkins, I've reviewed your lease agreement and spoken with Mrs. Peterson yesterday. There seems to be some confusion about the living arrangements in apartment 214. What did she tell you?" Maria opened a manila folder and pulled out several documents. "Mrs. Peterson has provided documentation showing that she's been paying rent on the apartment for the past 3 months. She's also submitted a lease modification form, adding her as a co-tenant signed by both parties." My blood turned to ice. I never signed any lease modification. I've never received any rent payments from her. Maria showed me a document with my signature at the bottom right next to Anna's. The signature looked exactly like mine down to the small flourish I always added to the R in Ron. "This appears to be your signature, Mr. Jenkins." I studied the document carefully. The signature was perfect, too perfect. Anna had somehow learned to forge my handwriting with incredible accuracy. "Mrs. Santos, that's not my signature. I never agreed to add Anna as a co-tenant." "Mr. Jenkins, this is a very serious accusation. Are you claiming that Mrs. Peterson forged a legal document?" "That's exactly what I'm claiming." Maria's expression became skeptical. "Do you have any proof of this forgery? Look at the date." "This document is dated 3 weeks ago, but I wasn't even in the area that day. I was working a job in Millfield 40 miles away. I can show you my timesheet." I pulled out my phone and showed her photos of the Millfield job site, clearly date stamped. Maria examined them with interest. "This is useful information, Mr. Jenkins. However, Mrs. Peterson has also provided bank records showing money order purchases corresponding to rent payments for the past 3 months. She claims she's been mailing these payments to the property management company, but they've been returned due to the recent change in management services. Money orders made out to who? To Springfield Property Management, which was Mr. Thompson's previous company name. Mrs. Peterson says she's been sending them to his old address, which explains why they were returned undelivered. It was brilliant. Anna had created a paper trail showing attempted rent payments to an address that no longer existed. She could claim she'd been trying to pay rent all along, but the payments had been lost due to the management company transition. "Ms. Santos, this is all fabricated. Anna Peterson has never paid rent on my apartment because it's not her apartment. She's running a scam." "Mr. Jenkins, I understand your frustration, but I have to work with the documentation provided to me. Mrs. Peterson has a signed lease modification, a history of attempted rent payments, and a key to the apartment. From a legal standpoint, she appears to have legitimate tenant rights. What about my rights? It's my apartment. You're certainly listed as the primary tenant, and your rights aren't being terminated. However, if Mrs. Peterson has established co-tenancy through this modification, then you both have equal rights to the space." I left the property management office feeling like the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. Anna had created a legal reality where she was my equal partner in the apartment I'd renovated with my own money and labor. That evening, everything collapsed at once. My mother called while I was eating a sad dinner from a vending machine outside the gym. Ron, I'm disappointed in you. Anna showed me the apartment today and it's beautiful. She's taken such good care of the place and she's been paying rent like a responsible adult. Meanwhile, you're living in your truck and stalking her like some kind of criminal. Mom, she forged my signature on legal documents. Ron, you're obsessing over paperwork while your sister is trying to rebuild her life after escaping an abusive marriage. I raised you better than this. Did you see any evidence that Jake actually hit her? I saw the bruises, Ron. Are you calling your own sister a liar? Yes, Mom, that's exactly what I'm calling her. The line went quiet for a long moment. When my mother spoke again, her voice was cold. I don't know what's happened to you, but you've become someone I don't recognize. Until you can find some compassion for your sister's situation, I don't think we have anything more to discuss. She hung up and I realized I just lost my last family ally. An hour later, my phone buzzed with another call. This time it was Officer Martinez from the Springfield Police Department. Mr. Jenkins, I need you to come down to the station immediately. Mrs. Peterson has filed a formal complaint against you for harassment and stalking. What harassment? I haven't even talked to her in over a week. Mrs. Peterson claims you've been calling her workplace, driving by the apartment at all hours, and leaving threatening voicemails on her phone. She has documentation of these incidents and witnesses who can corroborate her claims. Officer Martinez, I haven't called her workplace or left any voicemails. I've been working 12-hour days and sleeping in my truck. Mr. Jenkins, you need to come in now. Mrs. Peterson is requesting a restraining order, and there's enough evidence here to support criminal charges if this behavior continues. I drove to the police station in a daze. Anna had somehow created evidence of harassment that never happened, probably using the same creativity she'd applied to forging lease documents and creating fake rent receipts. At the station, Officer Martinez showed me printed copies of phone records, supposedly from my cell phone to Anna's workplace. The calls had been made during hours when I was working construction jobs with dozens of witnesses, but the phone records clearly showed my number. Mr. Jenkins, these calls are documented. Are you claiming these phone records are falsified? I don't know how she did it, but yes, those calls didn't come from me. Sir, phone records don't lie, and Mrs. Peterson has 3 co-workers who heard these threatening calls. Anna had somehow spoofed my phone number or found some other way to make calls that appeared to come from my phone. She was systematically destroying my credibility while building an ironclad case for harassment. Mr. Jenkins, I'm issuing you a formal warning. Any further contact with Mrs. Peterson, any attempt to enter apartment 214, any calls to her workplace or personal phone will result in immediate arrest. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. Anna had trapped me in a legal box where any attempt to reclaim my apartment could be construed as criminal harassment. She turned my own phone number into evidence against me and convinced 3 strangers to lie about threatening calls I'd never made. That night, I sat in my truck in the empty parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat, staring at my reflection in the dark windows. I'd lost my apartment, my family relationships, my reputation in the community, and now my legal right to even approach my own home. Anna had systematically destroyed every aspect of my life while positioning herself as the victim. For the first time since this nightmare began, I seriously considered giving up. Maybe Anna was right. Maybe I really was too simple to protect what was mine from people who understood how to manipulate systems I'd never even thought about. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This is Marcus, Anna's friend. She asked me to tell you that she appreciates how you're finally learning to respect boundaries. She also wanted you to know that she's found your father's old woodworking tools in a storage unit and will be donating them to charity next week unless you want to pay the storage fees. The unit costs $200 a month due tomorrow. Anna had my father's tools in a storage unit. The tools I thought she'd thrown away were being held for ransom, and I had less than 24 hours to come up with storage fees or lose the last physical connection to my dad. I counted the crumpled bills in my wallet, $63. I had $63 to my name, no apartment, no family support, and a police warning that would land me in jail if I tried to fight back. Anna had won completely. I was sitting in my truck outside the 24-hour Walmart at 3 in the morning, trying to figure out how to raise $200 before the storage unit deadline when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a name I hadn't seen in years. Jessica Martinez. Ron. This is Jessica from high school. I heard through Dave Kowalski that you're going through some family trouble. Jessica Martinez had been 2 years ahead of me at Springfield High, a straight A student who'd gone to college on an academic scholarship and disappeared from our small-town social circle. I hadn't talked to her in over a decade. Jessica, how did you get my number? I got it from Dave. Ron, I need to tell you something. I'm a private investigator now. I run my own firm in the state capital. Dave told me what's happening with your sister, and it sounds like exactly the kind of case I specialize in. I don't have money for a private investigator. That's not why I'm calling. Ron, what your sister is doing to you, it's not just theft. It's systematic fraud, and it's the kind of thing that ruins innocent people's lives. I've seen cases like this before, and I hate seeing good people get destroyed by scammers. I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks, a tiny flicker of hope. Are you offering to help me? I'm offering to take your case pro bono with one condition. If we recover any money or assets from your sister's scam, I get 20% of whatever we collect. If we don't recover anything, you don't owe me a penny. Jessica, why would you do this for someone you barely knew in high school? Because I know what it's like to be the underdog, Ron. And because my job has taught me that sometimes good people need someone who understands how these scams work. 3 hours later, Jessica picked me up in a black Honda Civic and drove me to a Denny's restaurant where we could talk privately. She looked exactly like I remembered: short, dark hair, intelligent brown eyes, and the kind of focused intensity that had made her valedictorian. Tell me everything from the beginning, she said, pulling out a digital recorder and a yellow legal pad. I told her the whole story, every detail, from the moment my key wouldn't fit the lock to Anna's text message about my father's tools. Jessica took notes without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification about dates or specific conversations. Ron, your sister, is running what we call a family exploitation scam. It's more common than people think, especially in families where there's a significant income or education gap between siblings. Education gap. Anna went to college, you went into construction. She married someone with professional connections, you stayed single and focused on your trade. In her mind, that makes her smarter and more deserving of nice things. Jessica flipped through her notes, underlining certain passages. Here's what she's done wrong. First, she's committed forgery by signing your name to the lease modification. Second, she's committed fraud by creating false rent payment records. Third, she's filed false police reports by claiming harassment that never happened. Fourth, she's committed identity theft by spoofing your phone number. Can we prove any of that? That's where it gets interesting. Your sister made several mistakes because she got greedy and impatient. Jessica pulled out her laptop and opened several browser windows. I spent yesterday doing background research on Anna and Jake Peterson. Want to know what I found? I leaned forward as Jessica showed me her computer screen. First, Anna has a history of this kind of behavior. 5 years ago, she was charged with identity theft for opening credit cards in her roommate's name. The charges were dropped when her parents paid restitution, but the arrest record still exists. My parents never told me about that. They probably didn't want to damage Anna's reputation. But here's the interesting part: the roommate was also a woman going through a divorce who needed temporary housing. Anna used the same fake domestic violence story to gain sympathy, then stole her roommate's financial identity. Jessica opened another window showing social media screenshots. Second, Jake Peterson is an idiot who posts everything on Facebook. Look at these photos from last weekend. The screen showed pictures of Jake and Anna at a lakeside resort, laughing and drinking cocktails. Anna was wearing a white bikini and had no visible bruises anywhere on her body. Jake had tagged the location as romantic getaway with my beautiful wife. They're not separated at all. This post was made 3 days after Anna filed the harassment complaint, claiming she was terrified of Jake's violence. But what about the bruises everyone saw? Jessica smiled grimly. There are a dozen ways to create convincing fake bruises from makeup to hitting yourself with a rubber mallet. Anna probably researched techniques online and practiced until she could create realistic-looking injuries. You said she made other mistakes. Oh, she made a big one. The fake phone calls to her workplace. I pulled the phone records from your cell carrier. Those calls were made using a spoofing app, but Anna was sloppy about covering her digital tracks. Jessica showed me a complex spreadsheet with numbers and timestamps. The spoofed calls originated from Jake's cell phone using an app called Call Mask. But here's the beautiful part: Jake forgot to turn off his location services. Every time he made a fake call using your number, his phone logged the GPS coordinates. What does that prove? It proves Jake was at Anna's workplace when the threatening calls were supposedly coming from your phone. And since you were working construction jobs 40 miles away with time-stamped photos, it proves the calls were fabricated. I felt energy returning to my body for the first time in weeks. Is that enough evidence to stop them? It's enough evidence to put them both in prison, Ron. But more importantly, it's enough evidence to get your apartment back and recover damages for everything they've stolen from you. Jessica closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. But before we move forward, you need to understand that this is going to get ugly. When Anna realizes we've caught her, she's going to escalate. She'll probably try to claim you're stalking her, that you're dangerous, that this investigation is part of your harassment campaign. What do I do if she does that? You let me handle it. Starting right now, you don't contact Anna, you don't go near the apartment, you don't respond to any provocations. I'm going to build an airtight case, and then we're going to hand it to the district attorney's office, along with enough evidence to get criminal charges filed. Jessica gathered her papers and stood up. Ron, I need you to go stay with a friend or get a motel room for the next few days. Give me 72 hours to put together a complete evidence package. When I'm done, Anna and Jake are going to wish they'd never heard your name. What about my father's tools? She wants $200 for the storage unit. Don't pay it. I guarantee you that storage unit is either empty or full of worthless junk. Anna is just trying to get money out of you while she still can. That afternoon, I used my last $40 to rent a room at the Budget Inn on the highway outside town. For the first time in 3 weeks, I slept in a real bed with clean sheets and air conditioning. When I woke up, I felt like a human being again instead of a defeated ghost. My phone had 6 missed calls from Anna, which I didn't return. There were also text messages from my mother and Uncle Brian demanding that I call them immediately. I ignored those too. Jessica had told me not to respond to provocations, and I was going to follow her instructions exactly. For 3 days, I stayed in that motel room, ate actual meals, and waited for Jessica to call. On Thursday morning, my phone finally rang. Ron, it's Jessica. Are you ready to take your life back? I've been ready for weeks. Good. Meet me at the district attorney's office at 2 o'clock. We're about to show Anna Peterson what happens when you try to scam someone who fights back. The district attorney's office was housed in a granite building downtown that looked like it had been built to intimidate criminals and reassure honest citizens. I walked through the heavy wooden doors at exactly 2 o'clock, wearing the only clean dress shirt I owned and carrying a folder of documents Jessica had asked me to bring. Detective Sarah Coleman was waiting in the lobby, a tall woman with graying hair and sharp eyes that reminded me of my high school math teacher. She shook my hand with a firm grip that suggested she'd dealt with plenty of scammers in her 20-year career. Mr. Jenkins, I've reviewed the evidence package Ms. Martinez provided. This is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases I've seen in years. Jessica appeared from the elevator carrying 2 briefcases and looking like the professional investigator she'd become. Ron, Detective Coleman is with the white-collar crime unit. She specializes in family fraud cases like yours. We went upstairs to a conference room where Jessica spread out dozens of documents across a long table: phone records, financial statements, social media screenshots, GPS data, and official reports from 3 different law enforcement databases. Mr. Jenkins. Detective Coleman said, settling into her chair. Your sister and her husband have been running what we call a long con. They've been planning this scam for at least 6 months, possibly longer. 6 months? Jessica opened her laptop and showed me a timeline she'd constructed. Anna started researching property values in your neighborhood last December. She also began following online forums about tenant rights and landlord disputes. In February, she volunteered to help you move your tools so she could make copies of your keys. In March, she started seeing a paralegal named Marcus Webb, who gave her legal advice about establishing residency. Wait, I interrupted. Marcus is a real person. Very real and very stupid. He's been giving Anna legal advice in exchange for sexual favors, not realizing that everything he told her constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud. Detective Coleman opened one of Jessica's files. In April, Anna and Jake opened a joint bank account specifically for this scam. They deposited money every week to buy the money orders they'd use as fake rent receipts. They also purchased the Call Mask app and tested it several times to make sure they could spoof your phone number convincingly. I felt sick. While I'd been working overtime to save money for apartment renovations, Anna and Jake had been planning to steal everything I was building. The domestic violence story was planned too. Jessica continued. Anna researched makeup techniques for creating fake bruises and practiced on herself until she could produce convincing injuries. She also studied domestic violence law to understand exactly what kind of claims would generate the most sympathy. Detective Coleman leaned forward. Mr. Jenkins, yesterday afternoon, we executed search warrants on both Anna's current residence and Jake's auto shop. We found evidence of the makeup kit she used to create fake bruises, printed guides on tenant law, and a notebook where she practiced forging your signature. You found her practicing my signature? 47 practice attempts on notebook paper, getting progressively more accurate. She was very dedicated to perfecting the forgery. Jessica smiled grimly. But the best evidence came from their computers. Anna kept detailed records of the entire scam in a folder she thought she'd deleted. We recovered plans, timelines, and even text messages between Anna and Jake discussing how stupid you were for not protecting yourself better. What happens now? Detective Coleman gathered the papers into neat stacks. Now we arrest them. Anna Peterson and Jake Peterson are being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, forgery, filing false police reports, and grand theft. The total value of their theft exceeds $25,000, which makes this a felony. $25,000? I thought the apartment improvements were worth $40,000. The fraud goes beyond your apartment improvements. They also stole your father's woodworking tools from the apartment and sold them to a collector in Louisville for $3,000. They used your forged signature to claim ownership of the tools. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not only had Anna stolen my apartment, she'd sold my father's irreplaceable tools and kept the money. However, Jessica said, the collector in Louisville still has the tools. When he learns they were stolen property, he'll return them rather than face charges for receiving stolen goods. 2 hours later, I stood in the hallway outside the courtroom where Anna and Jake were being arraigned. Through the small window in the door, I could see Anna sitting next to a public defender, her blonde hair pulled back severely and her face pale with shock. Gone was the confident smugness she'd worn when explaining how she'd outmaneuvered me. Jake sat at a separate table with his own lawyer, looking like a mechanic who'd suddenly realized he was in way over his head. Ron, Detective Coleman said, approaching from behind, would you like to know how we found them? They were hiding. Anna was hosting one of her fake support groups when we arrived with the arrest warrant. 8 women were sitting in your living room listening to Anna explain how domestic violence victims needed to be strong and independent. Jessica laughed. You should have seen their faces when Detective Coleman announced that their support group leader was being arrested for fraud. Anna tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that you had given her permission to live in the apartment. What did the women say? Most of them were horrified. A few tried to defend Anna until Detective Coleman showed them the evidence of the fake bruises and forged documents. One woman actually thanked us for exposing Anna before she could manipulate more victims. The courtroom doors opened, and Anna emerged flanked by bailiffs. She was wearing handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit that made her look small and ordinary, instead of sophisticated and threatening. When she saw me standing in the hallway, her expression shifted from defeated to furious. "This is all your fault, Ron," she shouted as the bailiffs led her toward the elevator. "I needed that apartment. You're just a construction worker. You don't deserve nice things." "Ma'am, you need to keep moving," one of the bailiffs said firmly. "He's my brother. He should have shared. Family is supposed to take care of family." The elevator doors closed on Anna's protests, and I realized I was shaking. "That's the real Anna Peterson," Jessica said quietly. No fake tears, no victim act, just pure entitlement and rage that someone dared to fight back. Over the next 2 weeks, everything changed rapidly. The apartment complex management company issued a formal apology and immediately restored my exclusive tenancy rights. They also offered to pay for professional cleaning and repairs to fix the damage Anna had done to my renovations. Anna and Jake's lawyer attempted to negotiate a plea deal, but Detective Coleman wasn't interested in anything less than full restitution plus criminal penalties. The evidence was too strong, and the fraud was too extensive. "They're looking at 3 to 5 years in prison," Jessica explained as we walked through my newly reclaimed apartment. "Anna will also have to pay full restitution for your lost wages, the cost of your motel stays, and damages for the emotional distress she caused." The apartment felt strange after weeks of absence. Anna had changed so much that I barely recognized the place I'd spent months renovating. But now, I could begin the process of making it mine again. What about my family? My mother still thinks Anna was the victim in all this. Detective Coleman is planning to speak with your mother personally. When people see the actual evidence, the forged documents, and the fake domestic violence claims, they usually understand pretty quickly who the real victim was. My phone rang. It was Pastor Williams from St. Mary's. "Ron, I owe you an enormous apology. Detective Coleman showed me the evidence of your sister's fraud. I'm ashamed that I didn't listen to you more carefully." "It's okay, Father. Anna was very convincing. The church community would like to do something to help you rebuild. We're organizing a work day to help you restore your apartment, and we've taken up a collection to help cover your expenses during this difficult time." That weekend, 23 members of St. Mary's Catholic Church showed up at my apartment with paintbrushes, cleaning supplies, and enough food to feed a construction crew. Mrs. Franklin, the elderly neighbor Anna, had convinced I was a dangerous person, brought homemade cookies, and apologized for believing lies about my character. "I should have known better, dear. You've always been such a kind young man. Your sister was very persuasive, but evil often is." Tony arrived with a truck full of building supplies and his entire construction crew. "Consider this a company team-building exercise," he said with a grin. "Plus, I want to see what you can really do when you're not sleeping in your truck and eating gas station food." By Sunday evening, my apartment looked better than it ever had. The walls were painted in colors I'd chosen, my furniture was arranged the way I liked it, and my father's woodworking tools were displayed on custom shelves that Tony helped me build. My mother called that night. "Ron, I'm so sorry." Detective Coleman explained everything to me. "I can't believe Anna would do something so elaborate and cruel to her own brother." "Mom, you couldn't have known. Anna fooled a lot of people. But I'm your mother. I should have listened to you. I should have believed you." 3 months later, Anna and Jake both pled guilty to all charges. Anna received 4 years in prison and was ordered to pay $38,000 in restitution. Jake received 3 years and was ordered to pay $15,000 for his part in the conspiracy. Marcus Webb, the paralegal who had provided legal advice, lost his job and his paralegal certification. He also received 2 years probation for his role in the fraud. I used part of Anna's restitution money to start my own renovation business, Jenkins Home Improvements. Jessica became my business partner, handling the legal and investigative side while I focused on the construction work. Our first major project was renovating a women's shelter, donating our services to help real domestic violence victims. The local newspaper wrote a story about the case, and I started getting calls from other people who suspected family members of financial fraud. Jessica and I developed a specialization in helping families fight back against scammers, even when the scammers were their own relatives. 6 months after Anna's arrest, I received a letter from her in prison. "Ron, I want you to know that I'm sorry for what I did. The counselor here says I need to take responsibility for my actions and stop blaming other people for my problems. I know I hurt you badly, and I know I destroyed your trust in family. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. You deserved better from your sister. I never wrote back, but I kept the letter. Not because I forgave Anna, but because it reminded me that sometimes people can change when they finally face consequences for their actions. Today, I own 3 rental properties and run a successful renovation business with 12 employees. Jessica and I got married last year, and we're expecting our first child in the spring. Every morning when I wake up in the apartment I built with my own hands, surrounded by my father's woodworking tools, and the life I've created for myself, I remember the lesson this experience taught me. Sometimes, the people who hurt us most are those closest to us. Family doesn't automatically mean loyalty, and blood relation doesn't guarantee love or respect. But truth and persistence will always overcome manipulation and lies. Justice isn't always immediate, and it isn't always fair, but it's worth fighting for. Most importantly, I learned that being kind and trusting doesn't make you weak or stupid. It makes you human. The problem isn't that good people exist. The problem is that bad people take advantage of goodness. The solution isn't to become cynical or cruel. The solution is to be smart about protecting yourself while remaining the kind of person you want to be. Anna thought she could destroy me because I was just a construction worker who didn't understand her sophisticated games. What she didn't realize is that construction workers know how to build things that last, and we also know how to tear down structures that are built on weak foundations. I built my life on honesty, hard work, and treating people with respect. Anna built her schemes on lies, manipulation, and entitlement. In the end, solid foundations always outlast elaborate facades. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who was taking advantage of your trust? How did you find the strength to fight back when everyone around you was convinced you were the problem? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story helped you understand that you're not alone in facing family betrayal, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people overcoming extraordinary challenges. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect yourself even from family. Remember, you have the right to defend the life you've built with your own hands. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it gives you the courage to fight for what's rightfully yours.